In a world obsessed with noise, silence has become a rare form of power. Most people talk too much, they explain too much, they react too quickly, they reveal their emotions before they understand them. They fill every empty space with words because they are afraid of what silence might expose. But the Stoics understood something different. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is control. Silence is discipline. Silence is power. There is a reason calm people command attention without demanding it. There is a reason the strongest minds do not feel the need to prove themselves in every conversation. There is a reason a silent presence can be more intimidating than 1,000 loud opinions, because the person who has mastered silence has often begun to master himself. And in this world, self-mastery is rare. The ancient Stoics knew that a man who cannot control his tongue will eventually struggle to control his emotions. A man who reacts to everything will become a prisoner of everything. A man who needs to be heard at all times often has not yet learned how to listen to his own mind. That is why silence matters, not because speaking is weakness, but because uncontrolled speech often reveals an uncontrolled soul. In this video, we will explore why silence makes you powerful, what the Stoics understood about restraint, and how silence can help you develop inner mastery in a world designed to keep you distracted, emotional, and exposed. And to understand that power, we must begin with a simple truth. Silence reveals what noise tries to hide. Chapter 1: The Weakness of Constant Noise. Most people fear silence. They fear it because silence removes distraction. When there is no music, no scrolling, no talking, no endless stimulation, something begins to rise to the surface. Their thoughts, their anxiety, their insecurity, their restlessness. Noise is often used as an escape, not from the world, but from the self. This is why so many people need constant entertainment. The moment the room becomes quiet, they feel uncomfortable. The moment conversation pauses, they rush to fill it. The moment they are left alone with their own thoughts, they reach for a screen. But Stoicism teaches that discomfort is often a doorway to truth. If silence makes you uneasy, it may be because there is something within you that has been neglected, something unresolved, something you have been outrunning. The Stoic does not run from that moment, he enters it. He sits in silence long enough to hear what his own mind has been trying to say, because silence has a way of exposing what noise keeps buried, and that exposure is not a punishment. It is an opportunity to observe yourself, to confront your impulses, to understand your fears, to recognize how often your mind seeks escape instead of clarity. Many people think power comes from dominating a room with words, but often, true power begins when you no longer need to dominate anything. When you can sit in quiet without panic. When you can remain still without reaching for distraction. When you can hear your own thoughts without being ruled by them. You begin to build something most people never develop, inner steadiness. And that steadiness becomes even more powerful when you learn the second lesson silence teaches. Silence protects your energy. Chapter 2: Silence protects your energy. Every word you speak carries energy. Every argument you entertain drains it. Every unnecessary explanation spends it. Every emotional reaction weakens it. Most people do not realize how much power they lose through careless speech. They explain themselves to people who are committed to misunderstanding them. They defend every decision to those who do not deserve an explanation. They argue with fools and wonder why they feel exhausted. They reveal their plans too early and then wonder why their focus begins to fade. The Stoic understands that energy is precious. Not every battle deserves your voice. Not every insult deserves your response. Not every opinion deserves your attention. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is remain silent, not because you are afraid, but because you are disciplined enough to know that your peace is worth more than proving a point. Silence protects you from saying things you will regret. It protects you from feeding conflict that should have died in its own emptiness. It protects you from becoming emotionally entangled in situations beneath your character. There is strength in refusing to give your energy to what does not deserve it. And there is wisdom in understanding that many people do not want truth. They want reaction. They want access to your emotions. They want to pull you into confusion. They want you to abandon your center and meet them in chaos. But the Stoic refuses. He remains anchored. He does not hand out pieces of his peace to every passing conflict. He chooses carefully when to speak, when to act, and when to withdraw. This kind of silence is not weakness, it is strategic restraint. And in a world where most people are ruled by impulse, restraint becomes a form of power. But silence does more than protect your energy. It also reveals something deeper. Silence gives you control over your emotions. Chapter 3: Silence and Emotional Control. Most damage in life is done in moments of emotional reaction. A sentence spoken in anger can break trust in seconds. A reckless response can destroy an opportunity. A moment of pride can create years of regret. The Stoics understood that between stimulus and response there is a space, and in that space lies freedom. Silence expands that space. When something offends you, silence gives you a moment to think. When someone provokes you, silence gives you a chance to observe rather than explode. When life surprises you, silence gives you room to respond with reason instead of reflex. This is why silence is so closely connected to power, because the person who can delay reaction has already begun to take control of himself. Anyone can react. Anyone can shout. Anyone can defend their ego the moment it feels threatened. But not everyone can remain composed. Not everyone can feel anger rise within them and still choose discipline. Not everyone can endure misunderstanding without rushing to justify themselves. Not everyone can stay calm when they are tempted to prove, argue, or retaliate. That ability is rare, and rarity is powerful. The Stoic knows that emotions are natural, but slavery to emotion is not. You may feel anger, you may feel hurt. You may feel humiliation, but you do not have to obey those feelings. Silence reminds you of that. It interrupts the chain between feeling and action. It gives reason a chance to enter the room, and once reason enters, your power returns. This does not mean silence is suppression. Stoicism is not about pretending not to feel. It is about refusing to let feeling become command. Silence helps you observe emotion without being consumed by it. You begin to notice patterns. You begin to see what triggers you. You begin to understand how quickly ego tries to protect itself. You begin to recognize that many of your strongest impulses are not signs of truth, but signs of inner instability. And once you see that clearly, you become harder to manipulate. Which leads to the next truth. Silence makes you less controllable. Chapter 4: Silence makes you hard to manipulate. People can control you more easily when they can predict your reactions. If they know what offends you, they can provoke you. If they know what flatters you, they can use you. If they know what insecurity controls you, they can exploit you. But silence disrupts that access. When you do not react immediately, people lose the easy map to your emotions. When you do not overshare, they cannot study your weaknesses so quickly. When you remain calm under pressure, manipulation begins to fail. This is one of the hidden strengths of silence. It makes you harder to read in the shallow ways that many people depend on. The world is full of those who bait, provoke, flatter, and pressure others to get what they want. They thrive on impulsive people. They thrive on emotional volatility. They thrive on those who speak without thinking and reveal too much without discernment. The silent person frustrates them, because silence creates distance between what you feel and what you reveal. It gives you time to assess motives. It allows you to watch more than you speak, and the person who watches carefully will always see more than the person who rushes to be seen. Stoicism values this deeply, not as a game of manipulation, but as a discipline of awareness. When you speak less, you notice more. You hear contradictions. You observe insecurity behind confidence. You detect motives hidden beneath words. You begin to understand people not only by what they say, but by what they cannot hide. This is why silence can be so powerful in conversation. The one who says less often learns more. The one who listens deeply sees what others miss. The one who does not rush to fill space often causes truth to reveal itself. And when you combine that awareness with emotional control, silence becomes more than a communication style. It becomes a weapon of discernment. But perhaps the greatest reason silence matters is this. Silence strengthens your relationship with yourself. Chapter 5: Silence builds inner mastery. There can be no self-mastery without self-observation, and there can be no self-observation without stillness. If your life is always noisy, fast, distracted, and externally focused, you may become highly informed about the world while remaining deeply ignorant of yourself. Silence changes that. When you sit alone without distraction, you begin to meet the person you have become, not the image you project, not the role you perform, not the identity you try to maintain in front of others. The real self. The restless self, the insecure self, the ambitious self, the wounded self, the striving self. At first, that encounter can be uncomfortable. You may notice how scattered your thoughts are. You may notice how much of your behavior is driven by fear, validation, or ego. You may realize that your mind is less disciplined than you imagined, but this is not failure, this is awareness, and awareness is the beginning of mastery. The Stoic path does not begin by pretending you are already wise, it begins by seeing clearly where you are still ruled. Ruled by anger, ruled by opinion, ruled by desire, ruled by insecurity, ruled by distraction. Silence exposes those chains, and once exposed, they can be weakened. This is why reflective silence is so powerful. It becomes a mirror that shows you what needs to be disciplined, a mirror that reveals where your peace is still fragile, a mirror that forces honesty. Most people avoid mirrors that reveal too much. The Stoic does not, he welcomes them, because he knows that self-mastery is not built through fantasy. It is built through truth, and silence, when embraced correctly, becomes one of the clearest forms of truth available to you. But there is another reason silence gives a person presence. Silence creates gravity. Chapter 6: The Presence of a Silent Person. Have you ever noticed how some people do not need to say much to command attention? They enter a room and their presence is felt. They speak little, but when they speak, people listen. They are not frantic, they are not eager to impress, they are not desperate to be noticed. That kind of presence is powerful, and often it is built through silence. Why? Because silence suggests self-possession. When you are comfortable without constant explanation, you appear centered. When you are not reaching for attention, you appear secure. When your words are measured, they carry more weight. People value what is not wasted, and words become more valuable when they are used with intention. The person who talks endlessly teaches others to ignore him. But the person who speaks with restraint teaches others to pay attention. This is not about acting cold or mysterious for effect. It is about living from a place of inner order rather than external desperation. The Stoic presence is calm because it is not constantly seeking reinforcement. It does not need to be loud to feel real. It does not need to dominate to feel significant. It does not need to prove itself every moment because it is not built on performance. Silence supports that presence. It helps you become less reactive, less needy, less scattered. And as you become less scattered, your energy becomes concentrated. Concentrated energy has force. This is why calm people often appear strong even before they speak, because people can sense when someone is governed from within. And they can also sense when someone is ruled by the need to be seen. Silence separates the two. But this kind of power requires discipline because silence is often misunderstood, which brings us to an important truth. Silence is not passivity. Chapter 7: Silence is not weakness. Some people confuse silence with fear. They assume that if you do not react, you must be weak. If you do not argue, you must have no answer. If you do not defend yourself instantly, you must have lost. But Stoicism teaches otherwise. Silence is not the inability to speak. It is the ability to choose. A weak person is often ruled by impulse. A strong person can decide. He can decide when silence is wise. He can decide when speech is necessary. He can decide when to step back and when to stand firm. This distinction matters because silence should not come from cowardice. It should come from clarity. There are times when you must speak, times when truth requires a voice, times when justice requires courage, times when your responsibility is not to remain quiet but to remain principled. The Stoic does not worship silence blindly. He uses it wisely. He does not avoid conflict out of fear. He avoids foolish conflict out of discipline. He does not hide his convictions. He simply refuses to scatter them carelessly. That is what makes silence powerful. It is not absence, it is control. And the person who has control can speak with greater force when the moment truly matters. Because when you are known for restraint, your words gain significance. When you are not constantly explaining, your explanation carries weight. When you are not always reacting, your reaction carries meaning. When you are not endlessly speaking, your speech becomes deliberate. In this way, silence does not weaken your voice, it sharpens it. And the more it sharpens your voice, the more it transforms your life. Because eventually, silence becomes more than a habit. It becomes a path to inner freedom. Chapter 8: The Freedom Found in Silence. There is a strange freedom that appears when you stop needing to respond to everything. You stop feeling obligated to defend every misunderstanding. You stop chasing the final word in every conflict. You stop needing others to validate what you already know within yourself. And with that, a burden begins to lift. You realize how much of your exhaustion came from unnecessary engagement, how much of your anxiety came from overexposure, how much of your inner chaos came from giving too much attention to things beneath your spirit. Silence frees you from that. It teaches you to preserve what matters, to guard your peace, to trust your values without constant performance. The Stoic life is not a life of withdrawal from reality. It is a life of disciplined engagement. You participate, but you are not consumed. You observe, but you are not easily provoked. You speak, but not wastefully. You act, but not impulsively. This is inner freedom. The freedom to remain yourself in a world that is always pulling at your reactions. The freedom to choose principle over impulse. The freedom to hold your peace even when noise invites you to lose it. And perhaps that is the deepest secret of silence. It teaches you that your power was never in being louder than the world. Your power was in no longer being ruled by it. Conclusion. Silence is not empty. It is full of discipline, full of awareness, full of strength. It protects your energy. It sharpens your perception. It deepens your self-knowledge. It gives you space between emotion and action. It makes you harder to manipulate and easier to trust. It teaches you how to be present without performance and powerful without noise. In a restless world, silence becomes rare, and what is rare becomes valuable. The Stoics understood that the person who cannot sit in silence will struggle to master himself. But the person who can remain calm, observant, and restrained in a world of constant provocation begins to develop a kind of power that cannot be faked. Inner mastery. Not the mastery of appearances, not the mastery of reputation, but the mastery of the self. So the next time the world tempts you to react immediately. Pause the next time your ego begs to explain itself. Be still the next time noise tries to pull you away from your center. Return to silence. Because sometimes the strongest thing you can do is not speak louder. It is to remain so deeply grounded within yourself that noise can no longer move you, and that is where true power begins. Final words. If this message spoke to you, leave a like and write in the comments. What does silence mean to you? And if you know someone who needs this message, share this video with them. Subscribe to the Stoic Path for more powerful lessons on discipline, inner strength, and self-mastery. Walk the path, master yourself, master life.